Good afternoon, everybody. Ethical community and cheating. You will need a writing instrument and a piece of paper to write on for this discussion, because I'm not just going to lecture. We're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk about the issue of cheating. I'm going to show some videos that I think you will find amusing, but will also have a purpose, and then maybe share some stories before we're done. And so to begin, I want you on your piece of paper to make a quick little list of how you saw cheating happen when you were a senior in high school. One or two or three things, best stories ever, of how you saw cheating happen when you were in high school. Senior year. Make one, two, or three ideas. Because I know when I've polled other classes, and I asked them, how many of you saw cheating happen when you were a senior? There's usually only one hand that doesn't go up, and that was the hand of the student who was homeschooled. You got my joke? I'm so happy. Okay? Unless they had a mirror. Then they might have seen it. Okay, and we're going to start, let's see, with you, my light technician. One story of how you saw cheating happen when you were a senior in high school. And speak way up so he can pick you up on the mic.
All my friends told me this when I back senior year. My best friend told me that he always cheated because his friend took the same test, took pictures of it, and then sent him the answers. So then he hid his phone in his jacket while taking the test, and he got all the answers right.
So you used high tech, right? Because you got the smartphones now and that can be done. What's your story?
It doesn't have to be like school. It can be like sports.
It could be anything, but I prefer school examples.
All right. Our people just hide their phones at their desks and Google it. Yeah.
Yep. Google the answer. Yeah.
Yep.
Like I do on Jeopardy at night, right? What's your story?
In my English class, I had a student that always sat by me who would just copy off my papers when I was on the computer.
Did you ever put in any wrong information?
No, I forget to correct it later.
Yeah. That's actually not a good idea, because we expect you to have the same right answers, but when you have exactly the same wrong answers, then we're pretty sure cheating happened. So that would be a bad dodge.
In math, we used to save the problems on our calculators.
Mhm.
Fancy calculators. You could save the whole pair of problems.
Very good.
Psychology.
Speak up so the camera can hear you.
Especially psychology, though, when I was in there, it just seemed like we had a younger teacher, so she just seemed like she didn't care. Everybody would look at everybody else's papers. It didn't really matter, obviously, to her.
Excellent. You don't have a story? Your story.
Usually, my friends and I will wait for the teachers to leave the room or whatever.
Mhm.
Someone called her away, and we would just mouth the answers from a distance.
Okay. Not even very discreet, except that the teacher had left the room. What's your story?
There's plagiarism.
Plagiarism. So how did it happen?
I just got copy and paste off the internet. Put it right
Cut
in
and
the
paste.
document.
Yep. Not unusual.
Just a cell phone trick to the table.
Cell phones. Speak way up.
In my English class, we always got the answers to the quizzes from the class before.
The class before.
And we would circulate the text message through our class.
Yeah. Didn't take long, did it? Like wildfire. Whoosh. And your way?
We wrote answers on the desk the day before.
Wrote answers on the desk the day before. Now, I've not heard that one. It's so simple, right? It's almost foolproof. Two best stories I've heard from freshmen ever. It was a math classroom, not much different from the size of this room, and it was holiday time, so they had a Christmas tree over, let's say, right here. This is the end of the classroom. Student came in the day before the test and put an ornament on the tree. His desk is right here. The ornament had all the formulas, and it was never detected. Okay? Second best story. You know what it was like in elementary school. You'd have the whiteboard here, and above it you'd have the cards with the letters and the numbers, right? Because children learn how to write their letters and make their numbers. And there was a test, and the teacher was sitting at the front of the room looking at the students like this, or reading a paper, or grading tests, or doing something where she wasn't paying strict attention. And a student at the back of the room who had all the answers, smartest student in the class, had a laser pointer, and they would point at the number of the question and the answer, either T or F for true and false, or A, B, C, or D for multiple choice. And everybody passed. She never got wise to it. So the student reported. So I'm going to show you a film clip right now from a movie called Spies Like Us. It's 4 minutes long. And you need to make a list of all the ways you see cheating happen, now that we've had a little review session, okay, in that clip. It'll be more than you think.
These examinations are qualifiers for positions in the intelligence sections of our embassies overseas. The nature of your postings will be secret. Now, secret work can be very risky. I cite as an example what happened to one of our greatest Americans, not yet.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. My fault. I'm sorry I'm late. I had to attend the reading of a will. I had to stay to the very end. When I found out I received nothing. Broke my arm. Would you hold my wallet while I take the test, please? There's $1,000 in there. Or maybe there isn't. You know what I mean?
Are you saying I can take this money if I help you pass the test?
What do you think? Thank you. So where do I,
Sit down! You may begin now.
Excuse me.
Okay. Did anybody get more than 6? 7? Who got 7? Okay, you're my star. What's number 1? What's one way cheating happened?
Right.
He attempted to bribe him, didn't he? And I think that once in my illustrious career that I was offered a bribe. I had a student who was here for summer school. He was from an oil country, didn't go to any classes, failed all the classes, appealed his dismiss. He was dismissed. He appealed his dismissal, and his uncle flew in from the oil country for the meeting and sat across from me at my desk with his hand on his hip saying, "Surely, Dr. Potter, there must be some other way we can resolve this matter." Okay, well, I'm still here, so you know I didn't take it, because it would have had to be enough to let me retire at that point, and that wasn't going to happen, okay? So I think I was, and that was actually the 4th way that cheating happened, okay? Did anybody see anything before that? Before the bribe was offered?
The kid was messing with his cuff or something in the thing. I don't know. Thought he was put stuff in paper in his cuff or something.
That probably wasn't one of them, but it might have led to one. What was the first way cheating happened? The very beginning of the clip. What?
Distraction.
That was number 5. That was after the bribe, okay, when he passed gas and distracted everybody. Because if I can make you do worse on a competitive test, my grade's going to be relatively better, and maybe I get the job. And that's what they were testing for, okay? First thing that happened was one of the students opened his test book early. It was a timed test. You're not allowed to start early or go long, right? Remember the ACT? They were very strict about that, weren't they? And anybody who would open early, they would get asked to leave the room and their test book would be taken away. Okay, and that's what almost happened to him. Then Chevy Chase came in. Remember Chevy Chase? He's older than me. Okay, he comes into the room, and why does he say that he's late? He had 2 reasons. Do you remember what they were?
Will.
He had a reading of a will, which meant somebody died. Do you know how many grandparents die at midterms for freshmen in college? It's a very common event. Now, they don't really die, but that's the excuse that students give to their professors in order to not have to take a test, not have to turn in a paper, or not have to give a speech when it's due. Does that ever happen in speech classes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. People come in with pretty lame excuses. And it's hard to, how do you not take a death in the family seriously if you're an instructor? Okay, so we have a rule here. If you're going to be excused for a death in the family, then you have to produce an obituary to prove that it was legitimate, okay? We aren't just going to take your word for it. We aren't also going to take a note from mom. Okay, those days are over. No notes from or calls from mom. What was the other excuse he gave? He had his arm in a sling, didn't he? Okay, was it really broken? You saw that later because he took it out of the cast, did he not? And what else do students tell us, Professor Moore, when they don't want to take a test?
That they're sick.
That they're sick, or they've been injured, or their car flipped over on 131 on their way to class. I actually had that happen to me once. Not to me, but to one of my students. And it actually did happen. He had the wrecker bill with the time and date stamp on it. I couldn't argue with it. And it was a snowy day. I knew it was a snowy day, so it was plausible that that had happened to him, okay? So we have, starting early, we have a death in the family, lying about that. We have lying about being injured or sick. We have the offer of a bribe. We have interrupting the class. That's the first 5. The next 3 are easy. What are they?
Eye patch.
The eye patch. He had a little crib sheet on the eye patch. Next one.
Someone's mouth.
He had his notes written on a piece of paper and wrapped in cellophane in his mouth, and he was pulling it out. It's amazing the extremes that students will go to cheat. They might as well have studied for all of the work that they did. Don't you think? Isn't writing all the answers down studying? It is. It's the first step to studying, but it is studying. And then after he took the piece of paper out of his mouth, he had another one in his cast. And you've all seen that. You must have seen people write answers on their clothes or on the desk, or some girls in the nursing program, some women in the nursing program. They were almost done. They were going to be nurses. They were taking an exam in one of their last classes, and this was the time when the women liked to wear the jeans that had the tears in them. You see some of that back again now, but this was 5 or 6 years ago. They had written the answers on their legs, and they would adjust the holes in their jeans to see the answers, and they got caught. They got kicked out of nursing. They were almost done, that close to the finish line. okay? So hardly worth it, and we'll talk a little more about that later. Then, so that's 8, 2 more to go. What were the last 2 ways that cheating happened? I'm picking on you. What was the second to last way cheating happened? It was very obvious.
He kept trying to get his attention.
He tried to get an answer. He didn't just try to get his attention. He was trying to get him to answer, what is the KGB? Okay? And at first, Dan Aykroyd refused to give it to him, didn't he? So the 10th way of cheating happened was what?
Distraction. He's communicating.
He gave him the answer. That's cheating. If you help somebody and it's unauthorized, that's cheating. Okay? So 10 takes 2 full hands to count the number of ways that cheating happened in that episode. Let's look at another clip.
Jamal,
Yeah.
got a call from the office.
All right.
Mr. Wallace, please. As you know, Professor Matthews is on the faculty board and Dr. Spencer's chair of the trustees board. The 3 of us have been reviewing some of the work submitted for this year's writing competition. And we were hoping you might clarify a couple of points concerning your submission. The Season of Faith's Perfection. Your piece, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Mr. Wallace, it is standard policy with us to ask our students if they wish to credit any source material or acknowledge any other writers when turning in an assignment. Do you wish to do that?
"1960, an essay titled Baseball's Best Year, with a subtitle that reads, A Season of Faith's Perfection. Published in the New Yorker magazine and written by one William Forrester. Your version is actually quite original, but then, of course, there is the title in the first paragraph to consider. Isn't there?
Jamal, either you happen to have the permission of William Forrester, or have you some other explanation?
No. That's my paper.
Well, then, your entry is now withdrawn, and this becomes a matter for the board to consider. And bear in mind, the board does have the authority to place you on academic probation, which would, among other things, prevent you from playing basketball here in the future.
Okay, that is from Finding Forrester. That's a fairly old movie now, but it's a film about an inner city kid who gets recruited to play basketball at this private school. I think it's in Philadelphia. And what he really wants to do is be a writer. And he actually is an excellent writer. And he hooks up with this guy that has watched him play basketball out of his apartment window on the streets for a couple of years and accidentally bumps into him. It turns out to be that famous writer, William Forrester, who says, I will help you become a good writer if you promise not to tell anybody that you know me. And so the student had access to his files and was coming up with an idea to write a paper for this essay competition, and he couldn't do it. You all know what I'm talking about. It's the day before the paper is due, and you cannot come up with a way to start the paper, okay? But you got to start the paper. So he's looking through the files, and he sees a manuscript version. That means a rough draft version of that article, and he reads it, and he likes the subtitle, and he likes the first paragraph, and that's what he uses to get started. But he never footnotes it, and he never takes it out before he submits his essay for the competition. The judge for the competition was a classmate of William Forrester, and he had the article in his files. It's kind of a funny thing. Professors have an uncanny knack for remembering what they've read, whether it's by another professional or by a student, okay? And they'll read something and they'll say, this sounds very familiar. And then they will stop at nothing to find out where it was from. And that was before Turnitin.com, or what is the product we use now?
Safe Assign.
Safe Assign, okay? where a professor can scan a paper in and find out if too much of it was borrowed without attribution, right? Okay, so he got caught. And you could tell from the expression on his face that he was busted, wasn't he? Plagiarism is the most common form of cheating that gets caught. It's not the most common form of cheating. The most common form is copying off of your neighbor or sharing notes between classes and those kinds of things. But plagiarism is the one that gets caught because the evidence is not refutable. If it is word for word the same as another paper, the professor has the student dead to rights. So I'm going to tell you a little story now about an experience I had when a student came in. He wasn't my student. He was a student at another college. He came in to see me. He wanted to complain that his roommate had stolen his floppy disk. That's how old this story is. And a floppy disk that had all of his papers from his English composition class the semester before on it. And I said, well, why would you think that? And he said, because my roommate is taking art history, and one of my papers was about Rembrandt. And I think he borrowed that paper to turn in for his art history class. So I asked him to get me copies of his papers off of his hard drive, and then called the art history professor. And I asked her, did you require a paper this semester? She said, yes, I did. Did anybody write about Rembrandt? And she said, as a matter of fact, I have 2 papers about Rembrandt this semester. I said, So I asked her to send me copies of those papers, and I put them side by side with the paper that he printed off for me, the student, and they were, except for the cover page, identical, the same. So that led me to call his roommate in, and I confronted his roommate with the evidence of his paper with his roommate's paper, and he couldn't deny it. So I said, well, my policy is that a student gets 2 strikes. The first strike is a warning, and it's to be educational, and that it must never happen again, this cheating business. And I said, have you done anything else that I need to be worried about? And he said, oh no, Dr. Potter, I have not. Well, I had looked at his schedule, and he was also taking English composition. So I called the English professor and asked her to send me the portfolio with his papers. And I was looking through that and the other papers that his roommate had turned in, and there were 3 more direct matches. So I had to call him back, and I said, strike 2, you now have 2 choices. You may either withdraw today, right now, or I'll have to turn you into student conduct for a hearing, which you will lose, and you will be dismissed, and it will go on your academic record that you were expelled for cheating. I never had a student choose to go through the process because I always had the document right in front of me that showed that they cheated. So he elected to withdraw that day at a great expense. It was a private school, and so it must have cost him probably $12,000 for that one little episode, or 4 little episodes, okay? But I still had 1 more paper. Who do you think it belonged to? And it wasn't the guy that turned him in, because he wasn't taking the class. Who could it be? Who would you help?
Girlfriend.
Bingo. It was his girlfriend, the original writer's girlfriend. And the reason he came to me was preventive. He needed to take the heat off of his girlfriend because he knew she had already turned in the paper about Rembrandt from his floppy disk. So I called the girlfriend in, confronted her with the evidence, told her about strike 1, and she said, well, there probably is something else I need to tell you, after she heard about strike 2. And that was this. That paper that my boyfriend wrote about Rembrandt, he wrote in high school for an art class. He turned it in for his English class as a freshman last semester in college, and then gave it to me to turn in for the art history class. And I said, that's too bad, because your boyfriend now has 2 strikes. Okay? He cheated once by turning in a paper he had written in high school for a college paper, and he cheated twice by giving the paper to his girlfriend to turn in. And so I had to call him in and have the talk, and that way I caught 3 people with 1 episode. It was very weird. Plagiarism, not a fun thing. Okay, why is it wrong? What's the problem with cheating? Why should we care about this? Seems like one of those victimless crimes, doesn't it? question?
Because one person does all the work and the rest of you.
Well, there's that unfairness. If you take somebody's work and don't give credit for it, what are your degrees going to be in? Are you all in the same program ultimately, or different?
College of Engineering.
Right, but what program?
They're all different.
What program?
Heavy equipment.
Heavy equipment?
Automotive engineering.
Automotive?
CAD drafting.
CAD drafting? Heavy equipment? Automotive? Construction management?
I'm changing to automotive.
Automotive?
Plastics.
Plastics?
Chem.
Mechanical?
Electrical.
Electrical? Construction management. So let's say you get a patent for one of the things that you invent, but somebody else takes it and makes the money. You've seen the movie about the guy that invented the automatic windshield wipers, and he got ripped off by Ford, I think it was. They took his idea and put it on their cars and made a lot of money from his idea. He never got a dime, okay? He didn't feel too good about that. That's a kind of plagiarism, isn't it? Okay, so you hurt the person that you steal from, but what else gets hurt? What if you were in automotive, you automotive students? Do I want you to have passed your classes through academic dishonesty when you work on my car? I don't think so. My pharmacy students, do I want them to have cheated their way through pharmacy school? Probably not, because I get about 8 prescriptions from them every month. And if they make a mistake, it's lights out, isn't it? How about a nursing student? When I go to the emergency room with, yeah. Oh, sorry about that, Wes. Didn't mean to hit the mic. I want them to know what they're doing when I go in there, and not to have taken that day off or that semester off and faked their way through it. So almost every degree that we offer here, I'm going to be depending on for my well-being throughout my life. All right, so I want you to know what you're supposed to be learning so that you can use it effectively to serve me when I'm paying those bills. Okay, make sense? Are there any other reasons why cheating is bad? If you're hired by somebody and you work and you are dishonest about your work, who does it hurt? Besides the customer, we already talked about that. The company. Okay, does that happen anywhere in the news? Seen anything lately? What?
Recalls.
Recalls on cars. What happened? What did they say they had done? That GM, that nasty GM, of which I own 3. Was it the ignition?
Yeah.
Okay, right?
They failed to alert the public about it. The ignition's not working
And how do we know that they knew?
from all the death records they have.
They had ordered 500,000 replacement parts before it became public. They cheated, okay? Same thing happened in drug testing, okay? What was the drug 15 years ago? You're the only one that's close to my age, okay? That they claimed to have tested. It was to prevent a certain problem, but it caused heart attacks. Vioxx. Vioxx pops into my head, okay? But they didn't tell the public, okay? They cheated. They shortcut the tests. But they said they had done them and that it was safe to take. And many people suffered or died because of that, okay? So it's not a good thing. Let's look at another clip.
You're really into computers, huh?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Dialing into the school's computer. They change the password every couple of weeks, but I know where they write it down.
Are those your grades?
Yep. I don't think that I deserved an F. Do you?
You can't do that.
Already done. Do you have a middle initial?
K, Catherine. These are my grades.
How can anybody get a D in home ec?
If that's none of your business, can you erase this, please?
No, it's too late.
What are you doing?
I'm changing your biology grade.
No, I don't want you to do that. You're gonna get me in trouble.
No, nobody can find out. There, you just got a C. Now you don't have to go to summer school.
Change it back.
Why? They can't possibly just...
I said change it back.
Okay, okay.
I guess I better get going.
Thanks for the ride.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so there's a one-strike offense. Okay. Anybody that gets caught altering records in any way, shape, or form is going to only get one strike, and they're going to be expelled, and it's probably a permanent expulsion. Okay, there'd be no appeal, there'd be no readmission at a future date, no parole, as they say, and that's what he was doing. But the question I have for you is, how guilty was she in that episode? And by comparison, I want you to think about, are you all living in the residence halls? What's the rule if you're in a room with somebody and they're drinking but you're not?
You can't be there.
Well, but you are there. So what happens when the RA walks in?
You're just as guilty.
You're guilty as the student who has the beer in their hands, right? Okay, so there's no mercy on that one. There would be no mercy for her either, because she was in the room, she did see it happen, she wouldn't be able to deny it, and she would be just as culpable, all right? So the life story that I have where this happened to me was, again, this is at another school. I had a student who wanted to go to law school. And to get into law school, you have to have really high grades, and you have to score really well on the law school admissions test, the LSAT. And you send all of your application materials to LSAT for processing, and then they push it out to the law schools that you think you want to go to. Well, I got a package from LSAT about 4 weeks away from graduation. And in it, they sent me a copy of a transcript that one of our students had sent to them, the student in question, that they said looked suspicious, and they were exactly right, okay? What he had done, and comes to pass, I called him over, showed him the document, he admitted to the forgery. He had taken his Commodore 64 computer, okay, this is how old this story is, and generated some new stickers to put on his transcript that changed his B minuses to Bs and his A minuses to As, okay? And then recalculated the grade point average, and it moved him up maybe like a tenth of a grade from a 3.2 to a 3.3, but he was hoping that would be just enough to allow him to get into the law school that he was hoping to get into. So I said, well, go get the disc that has those grade changes on it and bring it here. And then as soon as he did, I said, you have two choices. You can withdraw today, 4 weeks from graduation, or we can go through the judicial process and you will be expelled. And I don't know that you won't be prosecuted for forging a document, okay? And he did, 4 weeks from graduation, he did withdraw. His academic career there was done. I don't know if he ever finished someplace else. I know he never went back to that particular school. Okay. So there are consequences for cheating, and at Ferris, these are what they are. If a professor catches a student cheating, let's see if Professor Moore knows these. What can you do when you catch somebody plagiarizing a speech?
Well, I mean, as far as punitive meaning?
Yeah, punishment.
Okay. I can fail them for the class. I can fail them for the assignment. I can send them to student conduct.
Student conduct.
Okay, that's 3. I don't know.
Well, you could give them a verbal warning.
Okay.
Like the police officer that catches me speeding. He could say, I'll let you off this time with just a warning, right? Or he could write me up. He wrote me up. Ferris 5-0. I was coming home from a golf outing. Saturday night. I was 2 blocks from my driveway. Coming down that hill behind Swan. Okay? You pick up speed when you go down that hill. He was a new Ferris 5-0 officer. He wrote me up. I had a perfect record. I had never had a ticket before. No warning. There was no mercy. Okay? And most of the time with faculty, there will be no mercy. They will fail the student for the assignment, or they will fail them for the class. And usually that will be in their syllabus. so that you know what rules they're playing by. But how many students actually read the syllabus? Okay. Not so many. All right, so watch out for that. She's exactly right. She nailed them all. When it goes to student conduct, it's totally out of the professor's hands. That's the other interesting thing. So if a professor takes care of it themselves, then it stops there. But if they turn it over to student conduct, then they will prosecute. And they want all the professors to turn in people they catch cheating. Because that way, if it's happened in more than one class for a particular student, they will have the 2 strikes or the 3 strikes that they need to take a more permanent action. Okay? But a lot of professors are kind-hearted, and while they're offended that somebody would cheat on them, they want to give the student another chance. And so typically it's either a slap on the wrist or failing the assignment. If it's a big test, they might fail the class. Because if you get a 0 on a big test, that might be enough to put you down, right? A couple of other stories on cheating. Had a big lecture class, and we had 5 people who were all on the same team in that class, and one of them was an excellent student in that subject. There was no seating chart. So on test days, and they had 4 tests, 3 tests and a final, they would sit in a flying goose formation like this, in 3 different rows, and the guy with all the answers sat in front. And the 2 people behind him copied over his shoulder, and the 2 people behind them copied over their shoulder. And the professor was reading the newspaper and not paying any attention. So the students got away with it. They were, all 5 of them, getting A's. First test, second test, third test. And they would have gotten away with it totally, except the week before the final, before the professor had come into the classroom, they were mocking him in front of the other students and talking about how they were getting away with this scam. 2 of the students took offense to that. Said, we've had enough. We don't like it that we're having to study to get our C's and B's, and they are cheating and getting their A's. So they came to their favorite dean to file a complaint and ask what to do. I said, well, it wasn't my class, it was in a different college. I said, you need to go to the dean's office over there and let them know, which they did. And that dean and the instructor then set a trap. On final exam day, they made a seating chart. And instead of letting people sit where they wanted, they had it set up. So in that big lecture hall in Business 111, they were spread out that way, where there could be no possible looking and copying. And so the person who knew it all, he still got his A. The other 4 went down in flames. They all failed. And that gave them cause to invite them in for a little interview. And of course, you know what happens when you come in one at a time for an interview? Somebody's going to crack, aren't they? It's inevitable. Which they did. All 5 of them failed the class. All 5 of them had to take it over. They didn't get expelled from the university, but 2 of them were seniors. They had to come back an extra semester to take the class over in order to meet the requirements for their degree. And believe me, they were watching them like a hawk for that added semester. There is a little trick that a professor might do when that happens, when they come in for the interviews, and I want to clue you in on that, not because you would need to use it, but because it's a great story. This happened at Duke University, down there where they used to play basketball, right? I think they still do, but they used to play it better. There were 4 students who were supposed to be in a chemistry test on a Monday morning, but they had taken a long weekend away on a road trip and didn't get back in time. So they went into the professor's office and with the story that the car had broken down, it had a flat tire, and that's why they didn't get back in time to take the test. So the professor said, no problem, fellas. Come in on Friday and I'll have a makeup exam ready for you. And so the 4 guys came in, and he put them in 4 different cubicles, and they all had a test with one question. What was the question? This is for you automotive services guys. What? Well, yeah, they were lying about why they couldn't be at the test. That was the cheating. What?
What was wrong with the car?
Well, they said they had a flat tire. So what's the logical question?
Which tire?
Which tire? He had 3 different answers. They all went down in flames. Okay? So, and then it was compounded because they got caught lying. So they were doomed from the start. So that's cheating. That's the ramifications of cheating. That's why cheating is wrong. What can we do to avoid being put in the possibility of cheating? What? Study. What's another thing? There are like 10 things you can do, just like there were 10 ways that Chevy Chase cheated. Where else can you get help?
Tutoring center.
Tutoring. If it's an English class, where can you get help? The Writing Center. If it is any class, who can you go to? The professor. They have office hours. You know what? And here's the thing. I don't know if it's been your experience, but I have had colleagues who have said, I would love it if a student once came to me and asked me a question about my subject matter, instead of saying, what do I have to do to get an A? Or can I have a few more points? Can I get some extra credit? They hate those questions. Don't ask them. It is a turnoff. They tune you out right then and there. But especially you guys in your disciplines, if you were to go to those faculty and ask them a question about automotive or construction or CAD or plastics, they're going to be amazed, okay? Even if you have to make it up, okay? They're going to be amazed that you bothered to ask them a question. Any other resources available to help you with your classes? Anybody taking math with SLA? Does it work?
Yes. Awesome.
How does it work?
Better teacher teaches us.
I didn't hear that. We'll edit that out. No, you get extra instruction. It's not just tutoring, is it? There's somebody else teaching the subject matter, maybe from a slightly different angle. Which,
better notes, everything.
yep. How have you found it helpful?
More practice.
More practice. Time on task matters. If you aren't spending 24 hours a week on your studies, you're cheating yourself, because that's what it takes. And the way I show people that works, when you took high school math, you would have math 1 hour a day times 5 days a week. This is standard. I know there are variations. Times 32 weeks, which equals 160 hours of instruction, okay? When you take math here, who's got math? What do you got? Math 116, 126? 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 110? 4 days a week, how many weeks? 15. How many hours is that? Come on. Pressure's on. 60. You're short 100 hours from the get-go, aren't you? From what it was in high school, and it's the same material. It's still Algebra 1, isn't it? And you got to get through it in 15 weeks. So you better be putting time on task outside. Speech students, I pick on Ms. Moore because, well, actually, I've had a student come in this semester who was going to give a speech that afternoon after he met with me. And I said, well, where's your outline? I didn't make an outline. Doesn't every speech teacher require an outline? I think that's standard operating procedure. I said, if you got your cards, your prompt cards. I didn't make any cards. Isn't it normal to allow them like 3 or 4 cards for a 5 or 6 minute speech that they can use to prompt their memory? Okay. Well, he hadn't prepared, and he was supposed to go give it in 20 minutes. Okay. He didn't know to put in the time in advance. Okay. So you got to plan your work out, and you've got 4 weeks left. That's all there is. And by the time you come back from Thanksgiving, there's really only 1 week left. So if you, and the preponderance of your points for the semester are all coming right now. You might have 40% of the points for any class. The other 60% for each class is coming up in the next 4 weeks. And that's where the pressure to take shortcuts comes up. So you can help yourself a lot by getting busy now, starting to put in the 24 hours a week. And I know you have a lot of time in the labs for the engineering technology classes, but there's still stuff you have to learn. And Thanksgiving break, you have 5 days. Take Wednesday to go home, take Thursday to have fun, but Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, try and get about 2 hours in each day on something. If you can get 3 things done on Thanksgiving weekend, you're going to come back and you're going to be so far ahead of everybody else, you won't believe it. Okay? And it will seem like nothing because it's only 2 hours each day. Questions? Questions about cheating? About prepping? Good preparation leads to not cheating, right? Okay. Well, I thank you for your attention. Enjoyed talking with you. You're welcome.